The storm rolled over the city like a warning, pouring rain so heavy it felt as if the sky itself was grieving. Lightning flashed against the rooftops of the police K-9 training facility, briefly illuminating the tall steel gates in the empty yard, empty except for one dog. A massive Belgian Malinois, soaked in rain, pacing, growling, refusing to let anyone near him. His name was Rex, and every officer in the department knew one thing: Rex was a monster nobody could touch. He wasn't always like this. Once, he had been the pride of the force, the strongest, smartest, and fastest K-9 they had ever trained. But everything changed the night his partner, Officer Daniel Brooks, was killed during a warehouse raid. Rex had watched him fall. Worse, he had tried to protect him and failed. Since that night, Rex's world had collapsed. The once loyal, disciplined dog had transformed into a furious, unpredictable, dangerous force. He snapped at handlers, lunged at officers, attacked fences, and refused food from anyone. The entire department whispered the same painful rumor: they were going to put Rex down. But Chief Lawson refused. He believed Rex could still be saved, but months had passed, and every attempt failed. Trainers left bruised and bitten. Behavioral experts quit within a week. Even the bravest officers wouldn't step into his yard without protective gear. On this stormy morning, as the thunder shook the ground, Rex stood at the center of the enclosure, muscles tight, eyes wild, hackles raised. He'd become the dog everyone feared, and yet, only a few miles away, a little girl named Lila Brooks, Daniel's daughter, was staring out a window with a sadness far too heavy for her small shoulders. She clutched a worn-out stuffed dog in her arms, a gift from her father before he died. She remembered everything: the knock on the door, her mother collapsing to the floor, the cold heaviness of silence that followed. But she remembered something else too, something that still kept her awake at night. Her father had told her stories about Rex, that he was brave, loyal, gentle with children, afraid of thunderstorms. And he once told her something she had never forgotten: if anything ever happens to me, Rex will still protect you. Those words lived in her heart like a quiet promise. But Lila didn't know Rex was losing his fight. She didn't know he was a day away from being euthanized. That truth belonged to her mother, Sarah, who sat at the kitchen table staring at the letter from the police department. Her hands trembled as she read the final notice. Due to extreme aggression and failure to rehabilitate, Rex will be retired and humanely euthanized on Friday. It was Thursday. Sarah wiped her tears and hid the letter. She told no one, not even Lila. But fate had its own plans. Later that day, Chief Lawson made a decision he had been avoiding for months. He would visit Daniel's family one last time. He would tell them about Rex before it was too late. He owed them that. When he arrived at their house and knocked on the door, Lila answered. Her eyes lit up with a mixture of curiosity and childhood hope. She hadn't seen her father's chief since the funeral. "Hi, Lila," Lawson whispered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Is this about Rex?" she asked instantly. The question hit him like a blow. Her mother's face went pale. Somehow Lila had sensed it. Somehow the girl knew. "Can I see him?" Lila asked with a trembling determination that startled both adults. "No," Sarah said quickly. "He's too dangerous." But Lila stepped forward, her small hands clenched at her sides. "Rex would never hurt me." Chief Lawson froze. The little girl said it with such certainty, such quiet belief, that it made something inside him crack. He cleared his throat. "Sarah, maybe just one visit. She doesn't have to go inside the cage." But Sarah refused. She couldn't risk losing her daughter too. However, that night, Lila made a decision nobody expected. When the house grew silent and darkness settled in, she grabbed her stuffed dog, put on her little sparkly boots, and slipped out the back door. She walked in the rain without fear, guided only by love, memory, and the words her father left behind. "Rex will still protect you." The police facility was far, but she kept walking until her legs ached and her boots filled with water. She arrived just after midnight, soaking wet and shivering. She squeezed through a side gate left unlatched by a careless guard. The yard was dark, except for occasional flashes of lightning. Rex heard her before he saw her. A small figure, slow steps, no fear. He lowered his body and growled, a deep, warning rumble that frightened even the bravest officers. But Lila kept walking. "I'm not scared," she whispered, her voice soft but steady. When she reached the fence of his enclosure, she dropped her stuffed dog through the metal bars. It landed in the mud near Rex's paws. Lightning flashed. Rex froze. That toy, that scent, Daniel. It carried the smell of the man he had loved, the man he had failed to save, the only family he had known. Rex whimpered. The sound was small, broken, almost painful. Lila sat down in the mud, her legs trembling. "You miss him too, don't you?" she whispered. Rex moved closer, step by cautious step, until he was only inches from the bars. His ears dropped, his breathing slowed. For the first time in months, he wasn't growling, he was grieving. Lila reached her hand through the fence, not fast, not careless, but slow and gentle. Everyone who'd tried before had been bitten, but Rex lowered his head. Her small fingers touched his fur. Rex closed his eyes. Years of pain and rage began to melt. The impossible had happened. The monster had bowed to a child. If you believe in second chances, healing, and kindness, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps stories like this reach more hearts. But Lila didn't know alarms were ringing inside the facility. Cameras had detected movement. Officers rushed out, shouting, weapons ready, fearing the worst. They froze when they saw the scene. The wild dog, letting a child stroke his head. Chief Lawson arrived seconds later, rain dripping from his coat. The world seemed to stop when he saw Lila sitting calmly in the mud with Rex. He whispered, "My God." Sarah arrived minutes later, breathless and terrified after finding her daughter's bed empty. She saw Rex and screamed, convinced he would strike. But Rex did something nobody could believe. He stepped between Lila and everyone else, guarding her, protecting her, fulfilling Daniel's last promise. Sarah collapsed to her knees in shock, tears streaming down her face. Officers stared as if witnessing a miracle. No one dared move. To touch Rex would risk snapping this fragile moment in half, so they watched, silent and trembling, as Lila kept her hand on his wet fur, calming him with a courage nobody her age should have needed. Minutes passed, then an hour. The storm faded, the sky brightened, and slowly, Rex lay down beside her. The dog who attacked everything was resting like a loyal guardian. Chief Lawson whispered, "She's the key. She's the only one he trusts." Sarah didn't know whether to cry from relief or fear. Lila leaned against Rex as if he had never been dangerous, as if he were still the gentle partner her father once loved. The impossible had happened. Again. Deep inside the facility, officers made a decision that would shape the fate of the dog and the child forever. Tomorrow, they would try something unthinkable. They would bring Lila inside the enclosure. The world held its breath. The days that followed brought a strange calm to the house, yet beneath that quiet surface, something was changing inside Rex. He healed quickly on the outside, but deep within him, a storm moved quietly, pushing and pulling at instincts he could not ignore. Emily noticed it every night when he would sit alert at her bedroom door, refusing to sleep, his ears twitching at even the softest sound from outside. Sometimes he would stand up suddenly and stare at the window as though someone unseen was watching them through the glass. Emily tried to convince herself it was just trauma from the warehouse incident, yet Rex's eyes carried a warning she could not fully understand. Rex began pacing the house more often, moving from room to room as if he was checking something. Emily's mother assumed it was normal canine behavior, but Emily felt a pressure in the air, something heavy, something coming closer. She remembered how Rex had sensed danger long before anyone else, and a quiet fear began to bloom inside her heart. Rex had saved her once. Maybe he was trying to save her again. One evening, just as the sun dipped behind the horizon and painted the sky in deep orange, Rex suddenly froze in the living room. His fur stood straight, his muscles tightened, and he stared at the front door with silent intensity. Emily followed his gaze but saw nothing unusual, only the fading light slipping under the door. Then Rex growled, not loud but low, focused, a warning meant for whoever or whatever was on the other side. Emily's mother called from the kitchen, unaware of the tension. But Emily's breath grew shallow as she knelt beside Rex, placing her hand on his back. His body was trembling, not from fear but from urgency. Something or someone was out there. Minutes later, a soft tapping sound came from outside. Emily's heart skipped. Rex stepped forward slowly, positioning himself between Emily and the door. The tapping stopped. Silence filled the room so thick it felt like the walls were holding their breath. Then a shadow moved across the window. Not an animal, not the wind, a person. Emily clung to Rex's fur as her pulse hammered in her throat. Her mother walked in, confused by the fear on Emily's face. Before she could speak, Rex erupted into a bark so deep and fierce it shook the air. Her mother stumbled back, startled. Emily whispered that someone was outside, and her mother rushed to lock the windows, her hands trembling. That night no one slept. Rex stayed planted near the door until morning, refusing to move even when Emily begged him to rest. It became clear he was protecting them from something he sensed but could not show them. The next day, Emily's father, who lived in another city, called to warn them that the man who had run the illegal warehouse operation had escaped custody. Emily's blood ran cold. She knew instantly that Rex had sensed him long before any human could. Days passed full of tension. Police patrolled nearby streets, and neighbors were told to stay alert. Though Emily tried returning to normal life, Rex barely left her side, even following her from room to room. Every time a car slowed near their home, Rex would stand rigid, ready to fight. Emily had never seen such determination in any living being, and her love for him deepened with every passing day. She began to understand that Rex was not just protecting her out of instinct. He had chosen her as his purpose, maybe even his second chance at life. Then one evening, something happened that changed everything. Emily had gone to the backyard to bring in the laundry when Rex suddenly bolted out the door, leaping in front of her with a violent snarl. She froze as a tall man stepped out from behind the shed. His face was rough, his eyes dark, and even in the dim light she recognized him from the news report, the escaped criminal, the man who nearly ended her life weeks before. Her legs turned weak and she grabbed Rex's collar. But Rex wasn't waiting. He lunged. The man swung something metallic, hitting Rex across the ribs. But Rex didn't stop. He attacked again, pushing the man to the ground. Emily's screams echoed as her mother ran outside, dialing the police. The struggle was intense. Rex was injured but refused to back down. Emily watched with tears streaming as Rex stood between her and danger, just like he had done before. Only this time the threat was real, immediate, and merciless. Emily wanted to run to him, but fear glued her to the ground. Rex, bleeding again, growled with a ferocity she had never heard before. His entire being burned with one purpose: to protect her. The man stood, stumbling, and reached into his jacket. Emily's mother screamed, thinking he was pulling out a weapon. Rex sprang into action before anyone could react. He launched himself forward just as the police sirens grew louder in the distance. Officers flooded the backyard and tackled the man to the ground. Within seconds he was pinned, handcuffed, and dragged away. Emily collapsed to her knees beside Rex, who finally lay still, panting heavily, his fur matted with blood. Emily touched his face gently, whispering that he had saved her again. Rex's tail thumped weakly, but his eyes remained alert, scanning the area even as he fought to stay conscious. The officers told Emily that without Rex, the man might have succeeded in his plan, which they discovered was far darker than anyone expected. In his jacket they found rope, tape, and a list of addresses, Emily's home written at the top. It wasn't just revenge. He had planned to take her. When Emily heard that, her heart shattered. Rex hadn't just protected her. He had saved her future, her life, and her family's peace. But the night was not over. As Rex was being rushed to the emergency vet hospital, Emily sat beside him in the car, holding his paw and begging him to stay. The fear of losing him felt heavier than anything she had ever experienced. It felt like losing a part of herself. Rex had come into her life like a storm, violent, broken, unpredictable. But he had become her hero, her guardian, her miracle. Hours passed in the waiting room. Emily refused to leave. When the vet finally came out, her face was serious, her hands lightly stained with blood. She explained that Rex had lost a lot of blood, but he was strong, unbelievably strong, and he was fighting. Emily cried silently as relief washed over her. Rex had once been labeled untouchable, aggressive, a danger even to trained officers. Yet here he was, proving that his heart was bigger than his scars, his loyalty deeper than his wounds, and his courage stronger than any pain he endured. The next morning, Emily finally saw him. Rex lay on a soft blanket, bandaged, tired, but alive. When he saw her, his ears twitched and he tried to lift his head. Emily whispered that she loved him, that he was her hero, and that nothing in the world could ever replace what he had done for her. Rex closed his eyes gently as if accepting her words. And then something unexpected happened. The police chief visited the hospital. He had come with documents, official ones. He explained that after reviewing Rex's bravery and the bond he shared with Emily. The department had decided something unprecedented. Rex would no longer return to the police force. He had earned the right to retire permanently, and not just retire. He would be officially transferred to Emily's family forever. Emily cried so hard the chief had to pause several times. Rex wasn't just hers emotionally. Now he was hers legally, truly, completely. A once dangerous police dog had found his forever home, not because he had been tamed, but because he had found someone worth protecting with his life. As Rex slowly recovered over the next weeks, the house transformed into a place of healing and hope. Emily's parents built him a special resting corner, neighbors came to bring treats, and letters from across the state arrived praising the brave dog who saved a little girl not once, but twice. Emily would sometimes sit beside him at night, thinking about how strange life was, how a broken animal and a fragile girl could find strength in each other, saving each other in ways no one else ever could. And it was during one of those nights when Emily whispered something to Rex that summed up everything perfectly, that he wasn't a monster, he wasn't aggressive, he wasn't dangerous. He was simply waiting for the right person, the right touch, the right love to bring out the hero inside him. And together, they had rewritten each other's stories. Before the video ends, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in loyalty, second chances, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. And before you go, please comment below with one word that describes Rex, the bravest heart with the gentlest soul. The next morning arrived with a heavy fog that wrapped around the police training compound like a veil, softening the noise of barking dogs and clanking fences. Officers moved about with the same frustration that had weighed on them for months, because nothing they tried ever made progress with the dog they feared most, Rex. He was awake before dawn, pacing in the enclosure, eyes alert, body trembling with a mixture of anger and pain that no one had ever been able to understand. His reputation had grown into a warning throughout the department, a reminder that no one, no matter how skilled, dared come close to him. Yet there was something different in the air that morning, something none of the officers recognized, but Rex did. He kept turning his head toward the gate, as if sensing the arrival of someone whose presence was powerful enough to break through the walls he had built around himself. The officers thought it was nothing more than another sign of his anxiety. They didn't know that a little girl named Emily was already on her way back. Emily walked into the training yard holding her small backpack and a carefully wrapped sandwich she made just for Rex. The moment the officers saw her, panic rose in their voices, but she raised her hand politely, telling them she wouldn't get too close. Her mother stood at the fence, watching nervously, but she didn't interfere. Emily had begged her all morning for one more chance to see Rex. The officers didn't want trouble, but the chief finally allowed her to stay under strict supervision. No one expected anything to happen. Most believed yesterday's moment was only luck, a fluke, something that would never repeat. But Emily didn't listen to any of that. She believed in Rex more than anyone believed in her. When Rex saw her again, something shifted inside him. His tail didn't wag completely, but it twitched, as if remembering what it felt like to trust. The officers watched in stunned silence. Emily stepped closer. Not enough to be in danger, but enough for Rex to feel her presence. She talked to him softly, not like a trainer giving commands, but like a friend who understood sadness. The little girl placed the sandwich inside the gate, then slowly stepped back. Rex sniffed it, hesitated, and finally took a bite. It was the first time he had eaten in front of anyone in weeks. The officers exchanged looks of disbelief, unable to understand how her gentle nature managed to soften a creature hardened by fear and trauma. From that day on, Emily visited every afternoon. Each visit chipped away another layer of Rex's defenses. She never forced him to do anything. She simply sat near the fence, sometimes reading stories, sometimes drawing while Rex watched. The officers observed something remarkable happening. Rex stopped growling whenever someone walked by. He started sleeping instead of pacing endlessly. He no longer barked aggressively at the sound of footsteps or loud voices. Slowly, the monstrous legend that surrounded him began to fade, replaced by curiosity and a quiet hope that maybe he wasn't broken after all. But Emily knew something no one else did. She had noticed the way Rex flinched at sudden movements, the way he tensed whenever a man in uniform walked too close, the way his eyes darted to the corner of his enclosure where a dented metal bucket lay, almost like he expected someone to hit him with it. She tried to explain it to the chief, but adults rarely understood everything the first time. Still, she kept trying, insisting that Rex wasn't dangerous. He was scared. And one afternoon, her words would prove painfully true. During a routine training session, a new officer, one who had only heard of Rex's aggression, made a terrible mistake. Without warning, he slammed the metal bucket against the bars to get Rex to move. The clanging sound echoed across the yard like a shockwave. Rex snapped instantly. His body stiffened, his ears pinned back, and a violent roar tore from his chest as He lunged forward with the full force of a terrified creature. Had the bars not held him back, someone would have been seriously hurt. Officers scrambled backward, shouting for tranquilizers. Everyone panicked, everyone except Emily. She ran toward the enclosure despite her mother screaming her name. The officers tried stopping her, but she slipped through before they could react. She didn't touch Rex. She didn't have to. She just stood in front of him, hands by her sides, tears streaming down her face as she told him it was okay. Her voice reached him through the panic, through the fear, through the storm in his mind. Rex froze, then slowly lowered himself to the ground, whimpering like a puppy. The officers watched in complete disbelief as the deadliest dog in the unit surrendered entirely to a 7-year-old child. From that moment, everything changed. The police chief realized the truth. Rex wasn't aggressive by nature. He was a victim of his previous handler, a man dismissed months earlier for abuse and misconduct. The bucket, the loud commands, the harsh treatment, all of it had left scars that no training manual could heal. Emily had seen what grown men missed. Her innocence had connected her to Rex in a way that logic couldn't explain. She became an unofficial part of the unit, sitting in on sessions, comforting Rex after difficult drills, and helping the officers learn a gentler approach. Little by little, Rex transformed into the dog he was always meant to be, strong, disciplined, loyal, and kind. Then came the day of the demonstration, the day the department invited the mayor, schools, and families to watch the K9 unit perform. Officers hesitated about including Rex. They feared he might regress under stress. But Emily believed in him. She told the chief that Rex needed this moment to show everyone he wasn't the monster they thought he was. She promised she would be there with him. And so they agreed. The field was crowded with people, children running around, parents chatting, officers prepping equipment. The noise would have terrified the old Rex. But the new Rex walked beside Emily with steady steps, his ears alert but relaxed, his tail swaying gently. He wore a special collar Emily had made, blue with tiny stars, because she said he deserved to shine. When it was Rex's turn, whispers of fear rippled through the crowd. They remembered the stories, the warnings, the rumors. They expected chaos. What they saw instead left them speechless. Rex performed every command with precision. He ran through obstacles, detected hidden items, and executed protective maneuvers flawlessly. But the most powerful moment came at the end. When Emily walked into the arena and Rex, once untouchable, uncontrollable, feared, lowered his head into her small hands and waited patiently as she hugged him. The audience erupted into applause. Officers cheered. Some even wiped tears. No one could believe that the same dog who once terrorized the department now stood calmly beside a little girl who had given him something he never had before: love. But the story didn't end there. That night, something unexpected happened. As officers packed up, a man approached the chief with a serious expression. He was an investigator from another state, tracking a criminal who had been on the run for months. They had one lead, a scent linked to a recent break-in. They needed a strong, fast, and highly alert K9 to help their team. Most dogs weren't ready. But Rex had something the others didn't. A second chance, a fire burning inside him, a heart that had been rebuilt piece by a little girl who believed in him. The chief agreed to help under one condition: Emily had to be allowed to say goodbye before Rex left for the special assignment. The next morning, when she learned he was being deployed, she cried. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she knew she would miss him deeply. She hugged him tight, whispering for him to be brave. Rex nudged her with his nose, as if promising he'd return. The officers who watched knew they were witnessing a bond that defied logic. The mission was long and dangerous, filled with terrains and challenges no ordinary dog could handle. But Rex wasn't ordinary anymore. He followed scent trails through forests, across rivers, and between abandoned buildings until finally he located the criminal hiding beneath a collapsed shed. He barked, signaled the officers, and helped them take the man into custody without injury. The department received national praise. Rex became a hero. But even with all the attention, all the awards, all the recognition, he never forgot the girl who healed him. When Rex returned home, the officers didn't tell Emily right away. They wanted it to be a surprise. She had grown quieter without him around, spending afternoons drawing pictures of him, keeping his collar on her bedside table. The day she walked into the yard and saw Rex waiting for her, she froze, eyes wide, hands trembling. Rex didn't bark. He didn't jump. He simply walked toward her, lowered his head, and pressed it to her chest. Emily dropped to her knees, sobbing into his fur. and everyone who witnessed it felt their hearts melt. Their reunion became the heart of the department. Officers who once feared Rex now treated him with respect and affection. He became the symbol of the unit's transformation, a reminder of what compassion could do, how innocence could break through darkness, how even the most wounded souls could find their way back to love. Under Emily's guidance, they started a program helping rehabilitate other troubled dogs, using patience instead of force, softness instead of fear. Rex and Emily's story spread far beyond the city. Schools invited them to speak about kindness. Officers shared the story at conferences about humane training. Families wrote letters saying the story inspired them to adopt shelter animals instead of buying new ones. The department even installed a bench in the training yard with a plaque that read, "A little girl taught us that every heart can be healed." Months passed, and Rex grew older. His strength remained, but his face began to gray. Emily stayed by his side through every stage of his life, and on the day he finally closed his eyes for the last time, he rested his head in her lap, knowing he had lived a life filled with purpose, loyalty, and unconditional love. All because a little girl once reached through a fence and saw not a monster, but a soul begging to be understood. And now, dear viewer, if this story touched your heart, if Rex and Emily's bond made you believe in healing, hope, and second chances, then please like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. Your engagement helps more stories like this come alive. Before we end, write in the comments, "Every heart deserves kindness."